One of the first rules I learned when it comes to meal prepping, if you got time to make yourself dinner, don't just make dinner for that night, make it for 5 nights, like I'm doing tonight. Tonight, I'm making pasta, specifically my favorite chicken Alfredo. The problem with the regular chicken Alfredo I used to make, nowhere near enough protein. Whether it's using regular pasta or the store-bought Ragu Alfredo sauce, the Ragu Alfredo sauce has 90 calories a serving, with only 1 gram of protein. Yeah, that's not going to cut it. So, let's make our own sauce and make a basic switch on the pasta. Let's get started. Welcome back to Former Fat Guy Fitness. I'm Tyler, your former fat guy, and for the chicken Alfredo, as always, let's start with the ingredients. What you're going to need is 227 grams or 8 ounces of a chickpea pasta, 708 grams or 25 ounces of a skinless boneless chicken breast, 42 grams or 3 tablespoons of light butter, I'm using Land of Lakes, 95 grams or 3/4 of a cup of grated or shredded parmesan cheese, 840 milliliters or 3.5 cups of low-fat buttermilk, 23 grams or about 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and then 5 grams or 2 tablespoons of garlic minced up. For the equipment list, this is probably the shortest equipment list I've had, but all you're going to need is a pot to boil your pasta in and a large pan to do your chicken and your sauce in. You'll also need a knife and a cutting board, but man, you really better have a knife and a cutting board or you really should not be watching a recipe video. And as always though, if you do need anything, links in the description below. It does help the channel if you check it out. To get started, start with your chicken breast. Take your chicken, cut it into strips, and then take those strips and cut them into really small cubes. As always, make it as big or as small as you want, depending on the chunk size that you want. I like smaller, so I go with smaller cubes. Once you finish that up, put the chicken into a separate container and season it with what you want. Since most of the seasonings for the Alfredo sauce are going to be going on the chicken here, I use a lot of Italian seasonings. But overall, I use pepper, salt, onion and garlic powder. I use some basil, some thyme, some sage, and some oregano. Season all your chicken up and then set that aside. Then prep your garlic. Take 4 cloves of garlic, or like I said, 5 grams, press it flat with a knife to release the outside shell, and then hit it with a mince. If you don't have a mince, that's fine, just dice it up, but if you mince it, you'll actually release more of the flavors from the garlic by showing more surface area of the garlic. Either way though, it works just the same. With the chicken and garlic out of the way, move on to what you'll need for your sauce. Start by creating your cornstarch slurry. Take 150 milliliters of your buttermilk, put it in a small container, and add your 23 grams of cornstarch into that container. Then take a fork or a whisk, stir that up until it becomes one big mixture. You'll need this slurry to thicken your sauce a little later once you get everything cooked, but for now, set that to the side. Now you can move on to cooking everything. Start with your pasta. Fill a pot up with some water, turn it on a high heat burner, and then hit it with some salt and let it boil. Once it boils, add your pasta in, and we're looking to cook that to the al dente time. I would say about 6 to 8 minutes, but as always, check your box, cook it to what your box says. While your pasta's going, move on to cooking and doing your sauce and your chicken. I like to do my chicken and my sauce in the same pan as I find that adds more flavor into that sauce, but either way, you're going to start with your chicken. Start by preheating your pan to a high heat and adding 1 tablespoon or 14 grams of butter into that pan. Make sure you're using the light butter. Then add the garlic that you minced up into the pan to release the flavors and aromatics of that garlic, and after a minute or 2 of that cooking, add your chicken in on top of it. Sear your chicken to where there's color on all sides. It will continue to cook as the sauce is cooking, but for right now, just cook it until you see color on all the pieces. Once all pieces of your chicken have color on them, then we're going to turn the pan to a medium heat and push the chicken to the sides. Then take the rest of your light butter, throw it in the middle of the pan, alongside all your Parmesan cheese and about half of your remaining buttermilk. So that would be about 300 milliliters, because then you still have another 300 that you didn't use in the cornstarch slurry. Let that cook on a medium heat for about 2 to 3 minutes until all that Parmesan cheese is melted. If you want the Parmesan cheese to melt quicker, you can use grated cheese, but while I was at the store, all I could find was some shredded cheese. Once the Parmesan cheese is melted, add the rest of the buttermilk into it, and then add your cornstarch slurry into it and stir everything together and let it simmer to a boil. Once it boils, let it boil until it gets to a thick consistency that you like. If you find that your sauce is too thin, add a little bit more cornstarch in. If you find that your sauce is too thick, add a little bit more buttermilk in. Either way, get it to the thicker consistency that you see an Alfredo sauce typically get to. While this is going, your pasta should be done by this point in time. Take your pasta when it gets to the al dente time, strain it out in the strainer to get all the water off of it, and then hit it with some cold water so it stops cooking. Once that's all done, put it back into your pot, and then add your finished sauce into your pot and stir it all up. Then divide it between your meal prep containers and you're all done. So I'm gonna go ahead and do all that, show you the finished product, and then we'll go over the macros. For the final tip on this recipe, once your sauce cools, it will thicken naturally on its own. So don't worry too much about trying to thicken it out. It might look a little bit thin when you get going on it, but trust me, once it cools, it will get thicker. Also, when you eat it fresh, there's no worries about having to do anything to it. But if you're gonna reheat this as a meal prep like I do, I would encourage you to add just a little splash of almond milk or fat-free Fairlife milk to it when you go to heat it up. That way you can kind of re-creamify it. But it's easy to get your pasta dish high in protein. Just make some basic changes like we did here between your chickpea pasta, some low-fat buttermilk, and plenty of chicken. You can still have the things that you love. So as far as the macro breakdown goes for the entire meal, you're looking at 2,644 calories, 199.4 grams of carbs, 75.7 grams of fat, and 300 grams of protein. If you divide it into 5 servings like I did, for each one you're looking at 529 calories, 40 grams of carbs, 15 grams of fat, and 60 grams of protein for every one of these containers. So if you try this meal and you like it, hit the like button down below. If you have any other favorites you want to see made high protein, let me know in the comments. If you want to help the channel out or see more coming later on, hit subscribe. But in the meantime, it's time for some dinner. Thanks for watching.